there, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't seen me before, my name is Lauren, and today I want to just go over my reading wrap up for January 2024. So this month was surprisingly good. It was really weird because I read 11 books, and so for 23, that was probably the highest number of books I got in a month. So I don't know if it's just because January had 31 days and I came like straight out of the gate. Also, reading 3 audiobooks probably helped, but here we are. I read 11 books. I'm really thrilled, and from what I've seen from other booktubers, like they all had outstanding months as well, which is kind of weird. I don't know. What Kool-Aid did we drink? I don't know. I'm gonna move on. I'm really sorry if you're not a data nerd. I kind of am a data nerd, and so I just want to share some stats and graphs with you for the time being, okay? Okay, so like I said, I read 11 books this month. I read 3 audiobooks, and that leaves 8 other books, and so I did not read any physical books. I read all on my Kindle ebooks. One of those was from the library. The rest were ARCs, or a book I already had, or yeah, that would be the only ones. ARCs, ones that I already had for the library. That's usually how they get on my Kindle. Yeah. So in total, I read about 3,000 pages, just like a smidge above 3,000, which, good Lord, it's a lot. Some of the best books of the month, and so these aren't all the 4-star ones. These all just happen to be 4 stars, and they're the ones that I enjoyed the most. So first off is Ruth Ware's It Girl. It's a thriller. It was just a really good time. It's the first one I read this year. Kind of more psychological than like thrillery, but it was really, really good to start out with. Second is Not in the Plan by Dana Hawkins. I got an ARC of it. It was released on January 31st of 2024 for publication, and oh my God, it was just, it's like one of those rom-coms that you are just hoping to read. Like every time you open one, you want it to be light but serious and sweet and funny and everything, and that book checked all the boxes, so it is phenomenal. Okay, next up in the favorite books is Lucy Score's Things We Never Got Over. So it's the first book of the Knock 'Em Out mini-series, trilogy, whatever you want to call it. So I probably will end up reading, you know, the second and possibly the third book in February, but right now I just finished the one. It was really cute. It's what I needed after reading a bunch of heavy books like in the middle of the month. Finally, there's Off the Beaten Path by Madison Wright. So this is another rom-com. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. So is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. But Off the Beaten Path, it's set near a small town near Asheville. He's a single dad, he's tattooed, she's sweet, like grumpy, sunshine, forced proximity, cabin renovation, all of it. It was perfect. And it was also a very quick read. I think on the Kindle it only has like 286 pages or something like that. So it's really a fast, easy read. I read it over a weekend and it was just wonderful. So what were the 5 genres that I kind of read? So on my spreadsheet, how I do this, I'll probably put up a little screenshot of my spreadsheet. But how I do this is for each book, I kind of choose like what the main genre is. So for Lucy Score's Things We Never Got Over, it was romance. For Ruth Ware's It Girl, it was thriller, things like that. So kind of the main overarching genre of a book, especially if they kind of have like a lot muddled together. First off, it's not a surprise, I read 36% romance for my genres for January. Next came thrillers at 27%. Then historical fiction at 18%. I can't really remember what historical fiction I read, so. And then finally, the last 2 are tied at 9%, and that's magical realism and sci-fi. I only read 1 magical realism book and 1 sci-fi book. Just for like my peace of mind sometimes, like when I'm writing in my journal or whatever. So sometimes I don't always say like magical realism, I say magicism. It's like, why have we not shortened that? Why have we shortened sci-fi but not magical realism to magicism? But whatever. Next is just a little line chart of all of the pages that I read per week. And so you'll see the last one's kind of low, but it's only like 3 or 4 days, maybe. I think it's 3 days, Monday to Sunday. So the week of the 22nd through 28th was my highest. I read nearly 1,000 pages. It was like 900 something. But yeah, I don't know what I was doing that week, but I was not having a life. That's for sure. For these pages, I don't count audiobooks. There's no way to really see like how many pages you read because it's an audiobook. I don't really count up hours or anything like that either. Alrighty, so now we're at just the quick rundown of all 11 books with my ratings and little teasers of them if you want to read them. If you have read these and you liked them or you want to share your own thoughts on them, just share them with me in the comments, and I am so excited to see what you all thought of it. First up is The It Girl by Ruth Ware. I've already talked about this. I gave it 4 stars because it's dark academia. It's kind of psychological thriller. There's a lot of twists and turns. It's set in Edinburgh, Scotland. And then also, I think the students, I think they go to Oxford. I think that's what it is. And it's the main character's roommate is murdered at the end of like the 2nd semester of their freshman year. She thought that she had identified the right suspect, put him in jail behind bars. He dies. A journalist comes in and goes, hey, maybe you didn't get the right guy. It's kind of weird, right? You know? And so she goes on this whole tailspin. And she's also pregnant. Like, I think we get in when she's like about 20 weeks pregnant or something. That's The It Girl. It wasn't really like any of Ruth Ware's other books that I've seen, but it was still really, really good. Here's the historical fiction book. Next Year in Havana by Chanel Clayton. I rated this book 3 stars, so it was not my favorite. I listened to it on audiobook via Audible, and it just wasn't my cup of tea. Like, I have a physical copy over there I'm looking at right now, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. I don't know if it was the romance. I don't know if it's the romance that ended it. It was really interesting to learn about the history of Cuba because, I mean, like, I grew up in the Midwest and that's not something I really know about. It was really good, but I don't know if it was just like the interesting story. I don't know. It was good, but it wasn't my cup of tea. It wasn't what I was like wanting at that moment, I think. So maybe I'll consider like reading it like physically sometime, you know, like maybe in a couple months and seeing what I think about it that way instead. All right, next is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. And this was a book club book for the Brewery Book Club, Boozy Book Club that I go to. And it was our first read for January for the year. And I rated it 3 stars. It just was not my favorite. It is sci-fi. It's about parallel universes and worlds, and it felt like the pacing felt strange because the first half of the book happens in like 24 to 48 hours. And then the last like third of the book happens like throughout a month. And the pacing's really weird and strange. And I think if it had been a duology instead, the world building could have been a lot better. It just would have like made more sense pacing wise. It was a very good book and I am glad I read it. I read it on Kindle. It just wasn't, I don't know. I gave it 3 stars, yeah. Okay, next up is Not in the Plan by Dana Hawkins. I have a review on this book if you want to go check that out, but I gave this one 4 stars. It's an ARC, so thank you to the publisher. And it's LGBTQ+. It's about 2 women. One owns a coffee shop, the other is a writer, and the coffee shop owner becomes the writer's muse, even though there's like writer's block happening. It's just all around a good time. It's a little romance. It's very cute, very slightly spicy, but no like actual words are used. Alrighty, moving on. Next up is The Love Interest by Victoria Walters. I rated this 3.5 stars and it was an ARC once again. I also have a review of this book already posted, so you can go ahead and watch that if you're interested. It is a little bit spicier. I think I gave it like 2.5 spices. Thank you to the publisher because, I mean, it is an ARC book. All right, so it's a romance book set in London at a university. It was a very enjoyable book, and I think I also, in the review, I think I was a little bit harsh on it because, I mean, it's a romance book. The main character was a little bit whiny to me, And also it was only like a single POV when I'm learning that I really like the dual POVs in romance books, and to kind of check for that to ensure that I'm really going to enjoy the book. All right, the next book is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. I rated this one 4 stars as well. It's dark academia, it's historical fiction set in the 1960s, and it's a retelling of Carmilla. Carmilla. Laura's the main character. There's Professor De La Fontaine, and then Carmilla. All at this college, Professor De La Fontaine takes, Carmilla's already kind of like the pride student, like protege and whatnot. It is LGBTQ+. It has some religious undertones from Laura as she examines things. And I forgot to mention there's vampires. So that's a weird one. When I started reading this arc, I had kind of forgotten like what the whole synopsis was. And so I read it again, like the synopsis, when I was about 25% of the way into the book. And I'm like, I don't know, there's like some weird vampire-y undertones. Nothing in the synopsis said anything about vampires, I think. But then like I look in the genres on Goodreads and the first one is vampires. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not like going nuts. It's a very wonderful book. It was really fun to read, honestly, just because the whole vibe was vibing. There's a little bit of a mystery element to it and like a whodunit, all this type of stuff. It was a very enjoyable book, and if you get the chance to read it, I would recommend it. Moving on, I listened to Just Another Missing Person by Gillian McAllister, and I rated this one 4 stars. All right, so I listened to it while cricketing. I was making some cards and whatnot. It follows the story of a detective who is trying to solve a missing persons case about a year after another girl went missing. So the original one that she's currently looking for just vanished into thin air. I don't want to give too much away. She's having like troubles at home with her marriage and with her daughter. It's set in England. This was a really good book. I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much if I had like read the physical copy instead of listening to it, but it was a very well done audiobook. Then in that same weekend, I listened to The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. I listened to it in like 24 hours or less while cricketing. It was, I don't know if I was expecting more of a thriller, because the story kind of gets told to you and you're just like reading the story, and the story's told through letters. You don't really know who the letters are getting sent to. You kind of do, but you don't. And you're following Jules and her husband. He's, his adoptive mother, who was the heiress of like this wealthy thing in small town near Asheville, North Carolina, in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's a beautiful area. Also, the thriller part was kind of like skipped over suddenly, but overall, it was a very good book. I enjoyed reading it, and I'm kind of happy I listened to it instead of like reading a physical copy. The 9th book I read in January was The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown, and I rated it 3.5 stars. Magical realism set in New York City in 2022. It has like secret societies in a way. It has a mystery. It has, somebody kind of like Lord Voldemort-y and scaring this whole group of book collectors who are hunting for these special books that have powers, like to travel through any door or to start fires or to wipe your memory. All of these books are in different hands, and this one Voldemort-y person is trying to get her hands on all of them. And so there's a lot of characters in this book, but it is so well done. All of the characters are extremely well built out. It was really great to read. There's a little bit of romance between Cassidy and, Drummond. That's probably not how you say it, but that's how I'm gonna say it. That was an ARC copy as well, so thank you to the publisher of The Book of Doors for allowing me to be an early reader of that one. Also, thank you to the publisher of An Education in Malice for also letting me be an early reader of that book. The 10th book, I had just finished reading a lot of heavy books, like The Book of Doors deals with grief, and Education in Malice was like talking about power and power dynamics. relationships, all that type of stuff. So I needed like a lighthearted book or I was going to get burnt out. And so I picked up Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score, and this was a 4-star book for me. If you haven't heard of this book, like I hadn't really heard of it until like a month ago, it's available on Kindle Unlimited. It is a romance book. It's a pretty thick romance book, but it was really enjoyable to read, and it was also very spicy. Like, I'm gonna rate it 3.5 spices. And the final book that I read in January was Off the Beaten Path by Madison Wright, which I also rated 4 stars. It's set in Asheville, single dad who's tattooed. He has a 6-year-old daughter, and so his sunshine neighbor, because he's grumpy, sunshine neighbor Rin, she is renovating a cabin and her contractor kind of falls out, and so he happens to be a contractor. They also start fake dating, so there's forced proximity. And the best part about this book is there's no third act breakup. There is like, you know, a catastrophe that happens, but the two of them don't break up when that happens. It's more of like they're in it together to help each other as a relationship. It's a very healthy seeming relationship because they do talk and address certain things. And at one point he goes, I don't know if I can be in a relationship right now because I need to give everything I've got to my daughter at the moment. And she respects that and isn't like whiny, and you know. It was a really good book. It's also available on Kindle Unlimited if you want to check it out. I highly recommend this book. It was a quick, easy weekend read. So that is my January wrap up. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like, and if you're looking for more bookish shenanigans, I post every Friday, so consider subscribing so that you don't miss out. And I will see you all next time as I keep freaking doing this. Bye guys.